Hi there, folks. My name's Bill Murray, legendary comedian and actor, and yeah, I'm just here today to talk to you about working from home because working from home is awesome, and also because of a little thing called. There we go. I can't even see through this mask. This is a crazy idea. Whose idea was this? Let's take this off then. Yeah, it's really me. It's my name's Kev Johnson. There's my mouse. And yeah, as you might have noticed, Bill Murray, the world famous Bill Murray, one of my favourite actors and comedians in my favourite film of all time. He's, obviously Ghostbusters is the best film of all time, but it's Groundhog Day today. It's the 2nd of February. It's when a groundhog is raised out of his nest or burrow or whatever it is that groundhogs live in, and apparently, if he sees his shadow, it means we get some more winter. Now, it's snowing out there in the UK, so I'm in the north of the UK, and yeah, the weather isn't great. So hopefully we don't get too much more winter. But one of the things that I just a nice little cheesy quote that I got from someone I was speaking to about Runecast Analyzer, just as we were kind of lining all of this stuff up, is that without Runecast Analyzer, every day could feel like Groundhog Day in your IT environment. Now, that's pretty much as I'm going to talk about Runecast Analyzer today. So it's always fun to do these webinars. Normally, I'm talking about a new feature or a new release that we've brought out, or maybe a security standard and things like that. But because this is kind of early in the year and we've got a release going out very soon, but I can't talk about it right now, we thought we'd have a little bit of fun. And because everybody is now kind of forced to work from home wherever possible, and if you're working in the IT industry, chances are you're going to be working from home for at least a little while longer. I expect I'm going to be working at home for the rest of my career because it's a thing that I've done for quite some time now, for probably about 3 years. Prior to that, I worked from home a lot of the time anyway, even though I wasn't specifically tied to working from home, just because I find myself more productive when I work from home. I can work more effectively my own hours. I have less distractions because I don't have an office full of people coming and asking me questions all the time, although I do still have Slack. So, that basically does the same job. So what we're going to do here, let me just do a little bit of an introduction to myself. So I'm just looking at the names, logging into the webinar right now. There's some awesome people, definitely some names that I recognize. Also a bunch of names who seem to be, they're new names to me. So I'm not going to assume that anybody knows who I am. So I'm the technical marketing manager for Runecast. Here, what I do is basically I sit between the marketing team, the sales team, the engineering team, and I kind of act as that customer advocate. So, I speak to customers about how they're using Runecast Analyzer or problems that they'd like to solve with Runecast Analyzer, and I help make sure that that stuff gets built into the product. And then when it's built into the product, I help spread the news about the new features that we've got and why we have those features. So that's pretty much what I do. I run webinars like this. I make videos. I write white papers. I'm a busy guy basically, but everyone's busy, right? Everyone's super busy, and this is one of the things about working from home is everyone thinks, oh well, I'll go work from home. Or prior to everyone working from home, there was this theory that people who didn't have their boss stood directly above them watching everything that they did were just not going to do any work. And that was problematic for a lot of reasons. And I know a lot of people who work from home, and those people are actually, they're just really, really self-motivated. They're go-getters. They can just get everything done. Now, one of the things that has happened, obviously, since COVID is a lot of other people are now having to kind of figure out, how do I work from home? And we're going to talk a little bit about those people who, they've probably been doing it for about a year now. But what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can tease out some tips. I've got a whole bunch of tips that I've put together, some ideas that I've kind of come across over the past 3 years or so. But what I would encourage you to do is, if you have any tips that you'd like to share with the audience, please do drop them in the chat, and we'll read them out through the webinar so that people who are picking up on the recording as well after the event can get the benefits of those as well. If nobody shares their tips, I will be a really sad bunny, and this webinar will take about half as long as you might expect. So that might be what you actually want to happen. But you know, we're going to crack on. So other than that, yeah, just outside of the whole roomcasting, I joined the company. I used to work for VMware. I was tech marketing manager there for vSphere Lifecycle, and before that, I ran a team of consultants for about 6 or 7 years, focused on the cloud and infrastructure in general, lots of virtualization and that kind of things. You can catch me on my blog, where I very rarely get the chance to write, at v-it.pro. You can catch me on my podcast with my good friends at opentechcast.com, or you can catch me on Twitter as @kev_Johnson. And as I always say for these events, by all means, if you have any ideas that spring to mind, you know, maybe some tips that you wanted to share, or if you've got any questions about anything that we cover, please, by all means, reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll be happy to share them around people. Oh, let me just close that. That's not, we don't want to be updating things right now, not in the middle of a webinar. So one of the other things that we're looking to do is we really want you to take photos and share your working area, because I'm going to show you what my working area looks like. I'm going to show you what my partner's working area looks like, and they look very, very different. I worked from home for a long time. My partner, she's working from home since about 7 or 8 months ago. So it's a very, very different experience, and we have very different ways of working. So we're going to encourage you to take photos of your working area, put them on Twitter, use the hashtag RockWFH, and we've got some swag for what we deem to be the best pictures. And I'm obviously not allowed to win this, but you'll see how awesome my working area is in a moment. And just some ideas. So that, in fact, let's just go back. This working area here that you can see on screen, this is our head of marketing. I think that's his official job title, Jason, who's our awesome marketing guru. This is his working area in his new environment. In his old house that he moved out of not too long ago, it looked a bit dark and dingy there. That looks a bit like, yeah, it looks a bit creepy. I'm not sure I like that. But over on the right hand side there, you can see some of the swag that we're looking to ship out for the best pictures that we can see. So there's some KB Hunt card games. They're always awesome, especially when, you know, if you're working from home and you've got kids to entertain. Great way to get them interested in technology. Some stickers, some Lego minifigs, some T-shirts, all kinds of swag. And you know, those, I'll tell you what, those Lego figures are awesome. And I've got one just here. Oh, it doesn't want to switch fonts. The other thing that I've got here, because it is Groundhog Day, is a groundhog. So yeah, everyone say hi to Punxsutawney Phil. If you have not seen the film Groundhog Day, I cannot stress enough. You really should watch it. It's an awesome film. So in fact, let's just go back here. What I wanted to do actually was get some idea as to the people who we've got on this webinar. You know, how long have you been working from home? Is this something that's fairly recent? Have you been doing it a long time? So I've got a little survey here. Hopefully this is going to just work. So let's just click launch poll, and hopefully we should see that in a second. So yeah, we should see, there we go. So we've got a poll in progress for attendees only. If you could just click on the relevant one, and then I'll just chatter a little bit more. I was going to show you Phil again for a little bit longer, but obviously, yeah, let's focus on this. Wow, we're getting some really interesting numbers in there. So a bit of a mix, really, a bit of a mix. So I'm just going to give it another few seconds. If you've got if anyone hasn't voted and wants to chip in, by all means do so. But we'll give it another couple of seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll. Okay, we're about 65% voted. Great, that's about enough to elect a president, isn't it? Right. So what we've got there, we can see 33% of you work from home all the time. So you've been doing this long term. So actually, I wasn't sure if we were just going to get a bunch of people who'd only just started working from home. So it's great that we've got you folks on the call, because you're the people who are going to have all of the awesome tips. We've got 35%, so a little more, that say yes on occasion. So occasionally you're working from home. but not necessarily always. And that's kind of what I used to do a little bit when I was a consultant. So I'd work from home maybe 2 or 3 days a week. The rest of the time I'd be working based out of customer offices and things like that. So I would maybe go into the office once a fortnight or something like that. 23% say very rarely and 8% say never. So we've got people here who have never worked from home until we were in this kind of position. So I guess they're the ones who are here for all the tips. So I'm just going to keep nudging at you in that chat window, in the questions window. Please submit your tips. Otherwise, this is going to be a very short webinar. So I'm just going to wander through some of my opinions really as to the pros and cons of working from home, and how then we'll kind of move on to some of those things where we might want to share some ideas as to what's a good idea, what's not such a good idea, and how to handle problems. So the first real pro, the real positive for me for working from home is that there's no commute. So this is it always used to be dead time for me. So I would spend an hour every day traveling to the office, and then an hour every day traveling home from the office. And often there would be problems, the train would break down, there would be traffic. And so, getting those 2 hours of the day back for me is amazing. There's this idea that you have more free time. So, if you work 8 hours a day, then great, you just have to get out of bed, do your 8 hours, and then you can go back to bed. In the real world, I don't find that this is actually quite as true as you might think, really. So the more free time thing, there's the next real big thing for me is kind of was flexibility. And the more free time thing, there's pros and cons to that. You've got to kind of shuffle things around a little bit, especially when you work for a company that has offices in different time zones, for example. But yeah, the flexibility in working hours is a really big thing for me. So sometimes I'll be honest, I'm a morning person. So I'm out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. And I know that might come as a shock to some of you that there is a 5:30 in the morning, not just in the evening. But yeah, it works for me because I naturally wake up very early and naturally go to sleep very early. But then sometimes, there's for the last couple of nights I've been working into the evening and like finished work at 8:30, 9, 10 o'clock, something like that. But that's okay. I'm totally cool with that because of the way that my working day works. If there's a chunk in the middle of the day, say maybe I need to go out and do some shopping, it's grocery shopping time. Now, because of COVID and lockdowns and things like that, I'm not sure about everywhere else in the world where everyone is. But here in the UK, getting to the supermarket, you've then got to stand in a queue to go in because there's only a certain number of people allowed in. And it's quite stressful and it takes a lot longer than it might previously have done. So the fact that I can do that in the middle of a working day rather than at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. is super helpful to me. One of the other things around that is I kind of made myself a promise at the beginning of this year that I was going to get a little bit fitter because, carrying a little extra timber more than I should do, it's not good for your health. So I took up running again. So I used to be a really big fan of running. And what I found happened was I would go running for a little while. I'd really enjoy myself. And then I'd tweak my knee or I'd slip or I'd just get bored. So I'm now getting back into running. So last month I ran 50 miles, not all in one go, by the way. I ran 50 miles to raise money for the Alzheimer's Society in the UK. So they do a lot of really good work with people suffering from Alzheimer's and things like that. So that made me feel really good. And now I've kind of reignited that passion for running. So I try to get out for a run. And again, I like being up and about at 5:30 in the morning, but at the moment it's snow out there, it's ice. I don't really want to be running in -8, -9 degrees. It's not good. So sometimes I can fit that in the middle of the day, get back, have a shower, have some lunch, and then crack back on with my day. And I think that's really, really good. Obviously, it's horses for courses. Oh, great, we're getting some questions in now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, please do keep submitting your questions. And we've got a section at the end where we'll kind of, we'll run through them all that way rather than addressing them all as we go through. But please do keep sending them in. So yeah, flexibility in working hours is great, so long as it works for you and your employer. So I know some people. In fact, a very good friend of mine has just been going through a really tough time at work, whereby his employer wanted him to be super flexible, and then they needed him to be available at like 10 o'clock in the evening and all weekend. But there was no give from them, so that it wasn't really flexible working. It was just, we want you to work far more hours than we're contracting you for. And yeah, I've been a consultant. I've worked for those big projects where you've kind of got to do everything to get it over the line. But those kind of working conditions are not good long term. They're not good for your mental health. They're not good for your physical health. They're not good for your family life and your friends and all of those things. So bear in mind that flexibility works both ways. Oh, it's my button stopped working. The big one for me as well. So back in the days when I used to work in an office, I used to go in 5 days a week, and so I make myself a nice little packed lunch. And you've got to make yourself a packed lunch. That's one of the big problems. And the other thing is, you kind of go to get your lunch, and then you find out that someone's drunk. Someone's just gone, oh well, I'm thirsty, I'll have that drink, or I'll have that sandwich, or whatever. And if you work a long way away from where you can just go and pick up some more stuff, that's a pain in the backside. It really is. So yeah, there's less risk of someone stealing your lunch. Doesn't mean that there's no risk of somebody stealing your lunch, because as I said, I work from home, my partner works from home. So sometimes I go downstairs, I go, okay, well, I'll just have the remainders of my pasta from last night. I'll have that for my lunch, and it's gone. And she's just looking very smug because she's just had some delicious pasta. So it can still happen, but yeah, don't. It's a thing. It's a thing. And the other thing, actually, from a pro's perspective, so I don't have kids, and this is probably why I see this as a pro's thing. But now that I work from home, what I find I can do is I can spend more time with my pets. So I have a cat, I have a dog, and it's sometimes if you're really stressing about something, if you're really struggling to clear your head or something, just go sit down on the sofa, have a dog come and sit on your lap, and stroke the dog for 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, all of those stresses go away, and bang, you've got the idea. You know exactly how you're going to address those problems. And now on to the cons. So the cons, the kind of the negatives there then. So let's have a look. There's distractions. There's definitely distractions. One of the big distractions, or in fact there's two really big distractions. For people who've got kids and they're being homeschooled at the moment because the schools are closed, that's hard work. I absolutely full respect for anybody who's doing that. But for me, the biggest risk, the biggest distraction that I found is social media, I'm afraid. So social media, so Twitter. Let's name it. I'm not on Facebook, but Twitter is. I still have a little bit of an addiction to Twitter. So what I have to do is kind of set myself some blackout hours. So I'll just kind of go, okay, well, first thing in the morning, I'll start work, and I'm going to, because I do all of my really creative work happens first thing in the morning, and it works differently for different people. But what I have to do is essentially either lock my phone in a drawer, or yeah, and even that doesn't work because you can open Twitter on your web browser on your laptop or whatever. So I just have to be really strict and impose social media blackout hours, and that really helps with distractions. The other thing that's a bit of a distraction is, again, just outside the window there's a little footpath, and there's a park up the road where everybody walks their dogs. So if I'm sat or stood in this office, what I tend to find happens is I can hear people walking their dogs, and I immediately want to get up and just look at the dogs, because dogs are brilliant. We don't deserve them. So yeah, that's kind of in terms of distractions. There's less of that in the office, but if you're working in an office, there are other kinds of distractions. So I know when I was a consultant, one of the things that used to happen to me all the time is I'd be working on some kind of new architecture for a client, and there'd be someone who'd come through from the help desk because something wasn't working on the internal systems. It's like, oh well, you know how the internet works, and we've all seen the IT crowd, so it's just a little box with a wire going in, and you can hold it in your hands. If you're not familiar with the IT crowd, I strongly recommend that you watch the IT Crowd. It's a brilliant little comedy. But yeah, so lots and lots of distractions there. And the problem I tend to find, and this is the bigger problem for me, is if I'm really working in the zone and I'm really focused on one specific problem, if someone comes along and they get my attention for maybe 30 seconds, all of a sudden I'm not in the zone, and it might take me 20 minutes, it might take me half an hour to get back into that kind of productive mindset. So distractions are a real problem, but they exist in both places in different ways. Other commitments. So kids, if you're homeschooling the kids, this is a really big one. But also, at the same time, again, this is a COVID thing. So where I live, there are a lot of elderly folk. So what we do is we try to call around them on a regular basis. Just give them a phone call, check that they're okay, and see if they need any shopping or any of those kinds of things. So these kind of act as distractions as well. But you kind of feel, well, I'm at home. I don't have to do that. I don't have to go out and do that 2-hour commute every day. So I can spend that time doing other things where I'm being more productive and more useful to society. One of the things that I really struggled with when I first started working from home properly was prioritizing tasks. And everyone has their own different way of doing this. So what I try to do is there's something called the Pomodoro technique, whereby you break your day up into tiny little slots, and each time you're in that slot, you've got to complete a task. So you do a task, and you might work on it for 3 Pomodoros, and then you give yourself a little treat at the end of it. And there's swings and roundabouts here, because that little treat for me is usually in the form of something sugary. So it might be a sugary drink, or it might be a bag of jelly sweets or something like that. And that's one of the reasons I had to take up running again. So yeah. So prioritizing is a real thing. If someone, if you start your day, and this is actually something that my partner does. She starts the working day. Her boss gives her a list of things to do, and she just works through them. But that's kind of cool, because all of those tasks that she's got all have the same priority. So she just has to work through them all. The problem is, in different areas of society, in different careers, then what we tend to find happens is you've got some stuff that needs doing right now, and you've got some stuff that needs to be done, but maybe it's not due for another couple of days. And that's where prioritization comes in. And there's 100 different ways that you can do this. As I say, I try Pomodoro, and that works for me. But whatever works for you. The loss of human interaction is a really big thing as well. So in terms of human interaction, everyone's kind of used to, you go to the office, you go to the coffee machine, you bump into Dave from accounts, or you bump into all of your colleagues and you kind of chat. What happened on TV last night? Did you hear about the football results? All of these kinds of things where they're not directly related to being in the workplace, but if you're all of a sudden not working in an office, then you lose that, and that's a real problem for a lot of people. It can be this is one of the hardest things, I think, given the way that a lot of people are in this position of working from home, and that kind of can lead into cabin fever as well. So if you're in a hard lockdown, and various different locations around the world are doing different things, but if you're in a hard lockdown, basically you're not allowed to leave the house, so you lose out on the benefit of that time where you're on your commute. So maybe actually this is one of the things that I found when I started working from home, is I no longer had time to listen to podcasts, because I only listen to podcasts on my commute. And I also used to do study on the commute. So if I was on a long journey, if I was on a 2-hour train journey or something like that, I'd get the laptop out and I'd start doing some labs and things like that. That time still exists, but because you're not commuting, you lose that kind of capability. But being stuck in the house is really hard. And hopefully, when COVID is over and everyone's in a much better position, if you do continue to work from home, you'll have that capability to get out of the house. And again, this is where the dog comes in handy. She reminds me at 4 p.m. every day that it's time to go up to the park. She wants to go see her friends. She wants to eat some mud. Generally, she just wants to make a mess. Separating work time from home time. This can also be super tricky, and one of the reasons this is a problem is I have this less of a problem because I have this dedicated office. So I've got all of the lovely books here. I've got all of this kit that's in front of me that you can't see right now, but you'll see shortly. You know, I have this dedicated space, but some people, they're working from their kitchen table. And a tip that I saw on, I think it was on Twitter actually, what this family did is they didn't have a lot of space, so they got some hazard tape, you know, the yellow and black stripy stuff, and they marked out an area on the kitchen table that was their office. And there were two of them working, so they were sat at the opposite ends of the table, and when they were in that area, they were not to be disturbed. So the kids knew that they weren't to come and hassle them. That, you know, they needed to be able to focus. And then as soon as they stepped out of that area, okay, that's fine. I'm relaxing. I'm no longer at work. So for me, how I separate the work time from home time is I open that door just over there, I step out, and that's it. I'm no longer at work. Now I do that periodically during the day as well to grab drinks and things, but you know, it's really important to get away from the work environment. So I mentioned the less time to listen to podcasts, and the final one that I really want to kind of cover here is the endless video calls. So this is one of the biggest struggles, and it's one of the ways that we try to address that lack of human interaction. So we're not, you know, able to do these face-to-face things anymore. And as a way of compensating, I think we possibly over rely on video calls. And the problem with all these video calls is they very rarely finish on time, and they very rarely have any kind of agenda behind them. And you know, you can lose a lot of time. So often you can be sat on this, and it's exactly the same as if you have a meeting in the office. You get into that meeting and you spend half an hour in there, and you get to the end and everyone agrees this meeting could have been an email. So yeah, you need to be really strict. And I always try to make sure if I'm going to have a video call that I've got an agenda, that I know what the expectations of me are. And the same thing for everyone else. So if I'm chairing the meeting, I need to let everyone who's coming to that meeting know why they're coming to that meeting and what we expect out of them. So we're almost halfway through already. I can talk about anything, I promise. So I saw this again, I think it was on Twitter, the wooden work from home set for 3+ years. It's 15 pieces. It's a wooden laptop, a wooden tablet, a wooden mouse, a wooden stapler as well. So we're preparing kids for the workplace even now. But if you've just started working from home, let's start having a look at things. So this is Poppy. So Poppy is a Lhasa Apso. She's got very sensitive ears and a very annoying yap, and she's the ultimate lapdog basically. If I sit on the sofa, she wants to sit on me. But this is my partner's office basically. She sits on the sofa. She's got a little stool in front of her with a laptop, and that's where she does her work. And it works for her because you know, that's I guess what she's comfortable doing. But the dog always goes and sits with her, and then until I finish work and I go downstairs, and then she comes and sits on me. So that's how Poppy knows when I'm finished work. So you could work like this, but we need to bear in mind some other things. So it's health and safety, or health and safety. I love a good Christmas jumper. Love a good Christmas jumper. So try to set up a working area. So as I said earlier, the people who set themselves up with a you know, they put the tape out to mark out where their working area was. Now that's an extreme example, but do try to set yourself up with an area and think about things like, you know, how high your desk is. Think about how you're sitting in your chair, because all of these things are going to have long-term impacts on your health. The sofa is comfortable, but if you sit on the sofa for too long, if you're sat upright on the sofa, it's going to give you lower back pain, and that's not going to be a great place to you know, you don't want to be going to hospital, especially since it's full of people with COVID, right? Do take regular breaks. So again, this applies within an office and out of an office. So I always try to take a break, and you know, just grab yourself a tea or whatever. Actually, that's a good point about the tea. One of the things I found when I first started working from home was I drank a lot of tea, and then I found that I was struggling to sleep on a night. So I was very, very tired the next morning. So I drink a lot more tea, and you get into this vicious circle of caffeine dependency. So try to mix those drinks up as well. So in the afternoon, I have a herbal tea. It's a non-caffeine drink. Be careful of those trailing cables. So in that photo back there, where are we? No trailing cables, but normally there's a power supply plugged in. So it's very, very possible to trip over. And if you trip over, you're going to hurt yourself, but you're also potentially going to break your work laptop as well. So yeah, trailing cables. And in terms of tips of how to deal with these things, then do try to fit some water in with that caffeine, or try just to make sure that you're not just drinking espressos or also incredibly sugary drinks, because that's going to have a knock-on effect. It's going to make you get that sugar crash, or you get the caffeine crash. It's not a fun place to be. If there are other people also working from home with you, try to be clear about what your plans are, when you're going to take your lunch, what time you're starting work, what time you're finishing work. If there's any times where maybe you're running a webinar and you don't want them to walk into your office, these kinds of things. Just by setting out those kind of expectations, that can really help both of you. So you can take your lunch together, you can take your lunch at different times, whatever works most for you. Make lists. And this is where this is kind of how I deal with prioritization as well. So I spend a lot of my time just kind of writing lists of things, because otherwise I forget what I need to do. But also there's that really satisfying thing of being able to check something off a list. So you can get to the end of the day, the end of the week, and go, okay, I've done all of these things. Okay, maybe I didn't achieve everything that I needed to achieve, but that's cool. We can deal with that. We can move them into next week. Do take the time to chat with your colleagues, and use Slack, use Teams, use whatever it takes to have more of that office chatter. You don't have to just speak about the projects that you're working on. You can have just conversational chatter, and that's absolutely fine. In fact, I would absolutely encourage you to do that, and I'd be surprised if if your employers out there didn't want you to have that chat. Now, obviously, you don't want to be doing nothing but that, but it just really helps people connect and stay together. And one of the things actually that Runecast, so our chief exec, just before Christmas, he made a really big thing about the importance of mental health and looking after your mental health. And that's I kind of had a really good feeling about the company already by that point, but that point was when I knew this company is for me. They care about people's mental health. They think it's more important that you're well than you are sat at your desk. So it's great that employers are finally starting to have these conversations. So thanks for that, Stan. If you do have your room as an office, so normally I'm in here working. I leave my door open if I'm not really super focused. But if I'm doing a webinar, if I'm on, if I've got a lot of content that I need to create and I'm really super laser focused, then I'll shut the door. I've seen some people whereby they've got kids and they've put some cool little hacks together so that if they put do not disturb on their laptop, then a red light appears outside the door so the kids know not to come in. It's all kinds of nerdery goes on, and I think it's brilliant. As I mentioned earlier, do consider social media blackout hours. So for me, that's kind of in the morning. So and once I get to lunchtime, I don't mind. I'll kind of allow myself to check Twitter once in a while. But at my most laser focused, that's I want to make sure I remove as many distractions as possible. And do make sure that you uphold your work-life balance. So work-life balance is one of those things where everyone's got a different opinion as to what it should be. But one of the things it's really easy to do when you're working from home, and believe me, I've been there myself, is you just kind of go, well, I get out of bed at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning and I go to work, and then I'll take a break for lunch, and then I'll go to work, and then I'll kind of think, okay, I'll have my dinner, and then once I've had my dinner, well, what am I going to do? Okay, well, I've got some other things that I need to do to finish for work. So you end up working until 8 or 9 or 10 p.m. And again, sometimes you need to do these things, but if that's what you're doing all of the time, this is not good. You need to make sure you're spending time with your family, with your friends, even if those friends are only on Zoom or whatever. These are all really important things. And finally, something actually that I find really super helpful is to have background music on. So if I'm working on something that I really need to focus on, I will always put something, usually something fairly ambient. So maybe some, so like electronic music, or I'm less of a fan of classical music, but sometimes I'll put a bit of jazz on or something like that. Again, it really depends on what makes the most sense for you. And on that note, before we move on to the next session, I've got another poll I'd like to ask you to answer then, which is, once this is over, what do you think your preferred method of work will be? So that's going to pop up on your screen in a second. And hopefully this makes sense, but basically we're looking to establish, do you want to go back to being 100% in the office? Do you want to be 100% at home, or somewhere in between? So if you could drop your votes in there, I'm just going to have a mouthful of tea because my throat is getting a little dry. Interesting results there. Okay. Again, I'll just give it another few seconds so we can get some slightly bigger numbers in there. Great stuff. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. So what have we got here? What we've got is, so 6% of you want to go back to being 100% office-based, and that is absolutely cool. That's actually a much smaller number than I thought it was going to be honest, based on conversations I've had with people. 13% mostly office-based, occasionally working from home. Almost 25%, so 23% say a 50-50 split, and then the most popular one at 45% is mostly working from home, occasionally going into the office, so maybe going into the office once a week or once a fortnight or something like that. So that's really, really interesting. I think these are great great insights. Only 13% of people wanted to be 100% remote. So thanks very much for that. So I'm just going to jump onto the next section. So if you're a seasoned veteran, there's a couple of things that you can do. Either you have a room in your house, which is your office, and you may lose a spare bedroom for that. This is only a really small office. It did used to have a single bed in it, but we got rid of that. But it's great to have an office. But what I've seen a few people do, and I saw this on BBC News this lunchtime actually, is a lot of people in Britain, the kind of more wealthy end of the scale, they're buying luxury sheds and they're having their sheds kitted out to work in. And I thought that was interesting, and especially when I was starting looking at the prices, some people paying £25,000 for a shed, which is a phenomenal amount of money. Yeah, it's crazy, but I guess if you've got the money to burn, why not burn it? So this is my ex-colleague Mike Foley. He works for VMware, so he used to be the tech marketing manager for vSphere Security, and now he deals with all of the Kubernetes stuff, the Tanzu. So he's kind of my go-to security guy, but also my go-to Kubernetes guy as well. So he's got a shed at the bottom of his garden, which he amusingly calls his shed quarters. So he has to leave his house. He still has that commute down the garden path, and then sometimes that commute down the garden path is more fun than at other times. Mike lives just outside Boston, so they've got some pretty bad snow at the moment. So yeah, it's nice to kind of have that commute. You still have to kind of psychologically get out of the house, but I quite like I like my home comforts. I like the fact that it's always warm in here. I like the fact that if it's too hot, I can open a window and I'm all good. But yeah, the shed quarters is cool. I've seen all his CCTV and everything. So yeah, he's a good guy, Mike. So this is my setup, and yeah, you don't at me about the cabling. I know I need to organize the cabling. So what we've got here is over on the left-hand side here. You can't see it, but over on the left-hand side here, I've got a screen that I typically use if I'm writing any code or anything like that, or if I'm running a webinar, because I can keep all of the questions and all of that kind of stuff over there. Then I've got two 4K screens up here. I've got my MacBook down here, and I've got a little HDMI switcher down here. And then I've got the main camera up here, and I haven't actually got it switched on at all at the moment, but I've got a smaller camera down here that I can use for other things as well. And then just behind that, there's the whiteboard. So again, you can't really see it, but there's a whiteboard behind there that I jot all my pieces of work that I'm working on. So that's kind of what I've got. This is a standing desk, so I can stand up and do webinars like this. I can adjust it back down so I can sit down. but I do like to try to stand when I'm working as well. And this is something I only bought this desk a couple of months ago, but already I feel like my spine is thanking me for it. So yeah, you might have all kinds of swag like that. You might have a microphone that you can pull down like that, but you don't need all of this stuff. I'm just a bit of a sucker for a gimmick, basically. So some tips here. That image is my Google search for tips. So yeah, by all means, we've got loads in there already, but please do share your tips with your colleagues and also people on this webinar. In terms of the desk, yeah, the standing desk is brilliant. What I actually did, I kept the lid off the desk surface off my previous desk, and I spent a few £100 on an adjustable desk. And because of all of the stuff that I've got mounted on here, I have to get one with dual motors, and you can spend a lot of money on it, but just get yourself a desk that you enjoy. That is the right height for you, and if you need to be able to stand, then by all means do so. External displays. So some people just work from a laptop. I can just work from a laptop, but I find myself a lot more productive if I can throw things over onto a different screen, and then I can just refer to it while I'm focused on what's actually happening in front of me. Your chair. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, my partner, she sits on the sofa and she's fine with that. I have got this office chair. I've had this office chair about 10 years and I'm about to replace it. I think I'm probably going to try and get one of those posh Herman Millers. I'll probably just get a second-hand one that's been refurbished or something. But a good seat is absolutely worth its weight in gold. So one of the other things is, do you want to have a headset? So wireless headset, or even a wired headset. I have a couple of wireless headsets. I also have a wired one, which is there for emergencies when something goes wrong. Excuse me. Excuse me. So yeah, do you want a headset or just want to have a microphone and have your speakers? Lighting as well. So you'll notice back on that previous screen that we had, I've got some fancy key lights. And just to give you some idea as to the difference, if I don't have those lights on, this is what it looks like. So without those lights, it's not very good. It's actually not that bad for the moment, but if it's darker, or especially, it's actually worse if it's brighter outside. But yeah, one of the big things to bear in mind, I've got a very, very posh camera here. If you're just using the internal webcam on your laptop, you're going to see very, very different results. And then on that point, yeah, the external webcam or camera, if you're using the embedded one, especially if you've got one of those Dell laptops that for some reason they took the design decision that what they would do is place the webcam basically at keyboard height. So whenever you're talking to someone on one of those, all you've got is a really good shot up their nose. It's not brilliant. Some of the embedded cameras are okay. The embedded camera on the MacBook, I'm not a massive fan of. So yeah, I've got these external cameras, they're mirrorless Sony Alpha cameras. They're massive overkill for almost anything that you might need to do within a home office. But I also like to take photos. So yeah, it's always nice to have. And then the internet connection. So the internet connection is really important, because if you've got 3 or 4, if you've got two adults and then maybe 3 or 4 kids, all working from home, that internet connection is going to get hammered. And then you need to consider whether you're going to go wired or wireless. So I'm connected, my MacBook is connected through a dongle. It's all plugged into physical networking. I've used wireless in the past, and we have wireless around the house, and it's great for connect your phone to or whatever. But if you're doing a webinar, the last thing you need is bad latency or anything like that. And again, the Zoom call. So actually, let's just do the final poll. So the final poll that I've got here. We do have a few more slides to go, but I'd like to ask you: have you learned anything during COVID-19 that's going to help you when things return to normal? And if the answer to this is yes, what I'd ask is if you could again share that in the questions section, and we'll have a look at those at the end. We're down to 15 minutes to go, so we're not going to be too much longer. But yes, so, oh wow, quite a lot of you answering yes there. Brilliant stuff. Okay, so we're at 60%. I'm just gonna give it another few seconds. Okay, that looks like everyone who wants to vote has voted. So I'm just going to close the poll now. So yeah, 88%. 88% of you is a massive number. So it would be interesting to see if anyone's got any tips that they want to share in there for those of us who are still working from home, still, maybe have some struggles. So from a communication perspective, there's a million different channels that you can work on. So this is a screenshot of some of the Slack groups that I'm a member of. So there's the corporate one, there's the VMware vExpert, Kubernetes, the Linux Academy training, VMware Code. There's a whole bunch of others as well. I think there's about another 9 in that column. So each one of those, you've got different amounts of chatter going on in. So this could be distracting. Then there's your email. And then, if you're in Teams as well, there's Teams calls, there's Zoom calls, there's GoToMeetings, there's Cisco WebEx, there's Google Chat in there as well. So there's lots of different ways that your time can be sapped away. So let's have a think about how we can improve things for communication. So firstly, email is not a real-time protocol, and the sooner that you explain to your colleagues that that's the case, the better your life is going to be. What I do with email is I'll check email first thing in the morning before I go into my kind of super focused zone. And then I'll again around about 11 in the morning, as I come out of that, I'll check my email again, maybe just before lunch, just after lunch, and then maybe at the end of the day. I do not respond to emails as if someone has an urgent reason to get in touch with me, they should not contact me by email. There's Slack, there's all kinds of other channels that are far better for that. Being a slave to email is a really, really, really big problem, especially now you've got corporate email on your phone and you're checking your phone through the night because you're looking at Snapchat or Facebook or whatever. Instant messaging can get very noisy. So one of the things that I do before I start a webinar or before I go into my super focus point is I'll either mute a whole bunch of channels or I'll just log out. And there's no problem with doing that, or I'll set do not disturb on my laptop. That's absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about this stuff because people can always call you if they need you urgently. If you're doing video calls, please turn on your camera. I know this is one of the fun things that happens at Roomcast. I join calls and I've got the camera on, and then people will sometimes just go, oh, well, I'll switch my camera on. And it's so much better, it's so much nicer if you can see what everyone else's faces are doing, and it's just you remember what they look like as well. If something is if people are sending you messages about things, try to establish what the time frame is that they need a response for. So if someone sends you an email saying, can you do this thing, probably the first thing you should do is, instead of going, I don't know what to do, I've got a million things on my plate, and believe me, I do this on a regular basis, is just go back and go, okay, how urgent is this? When do you need a response? And often that's a great way to just buy you some time and figure out and help you with that prioritization I mentioned earlier. If you're booking meetings, if it's a half an hour meeting, book that meeting for 25 minutes. If it's an hour meeting, book it for 50 minutes. Leave that 10 minutes at the end, and try to stick to that 10 minutes at the end as well, because you need time to get away from your desk, to stretch your legs, to roll your neck, to grab a drink. All of these things are important. And if you are on a long call and you need to go for a break, please mute yourself, because nobody needs to know that you've gone to the toilet. I've not experienced this myself, but I know a number of people who have. If you're presenting something, please use presenter mode. Nobody wants to see the slides in with all the slides down the side. You should use presenter mode, like what I've got going on here. People just need to be able to see the slides. They don't need the distractions. More important than that, close any unused applications. So I mentioned earlier, I log out of Slack sometimes, emails, all of these things. You can close those applications because you don't need them popping up in the bottom of your screen, distracting not only you, but everyone else who's on there. And here's a little tip for you. There we go. Turn on Do Not Disturb mode. It's there. I mean, if you've got a Mac, it's there. That's all you have to do. But obviously, different operating systems are available. Each have their own different ways of handling this. So I know you can definitely disable notifications temporarily on Windows as well. So on that note, we're pretty much at the end. So what I'm going to do, we've got exactly 10 minutes. So great. So we've got, let's just run through these. We've got Howdy from gloomy Florida. Take frequent screen breaks. That is a great point. So I mentioned breaks in general, but one of the things that I used to, when I worked for VMware, they had a piece of software that was pushed to your corporate laptop, and I think it was every hour they forced you to basically what happened is it locked your screen, and on your screen instead it just gave you some exercises to do, and these were all exercises you could do at a desk. So it would just be like stand up, do some stretching, all of these kinds of things. These are just the things that are important. We need to make sure that we're not just staring at a screen all day. Wander around your home every 20 minutes or so. Speak to your significant other if you have one. That's a great tip, Mark. Thanks very much for that. And also find out if you're a lark or an owl. So this is, there's a great book by, it's on here, just bear with me 2 seconds. I forget who it is. I think it's Daniel H. Pink. And the book is all about figuring out, when you're the most effective. So you may be a lark, in which case you're going to be up early in the morning. You're going to be very effective at that point. You may be a night owl, or you might be like most people and somewhere in between. So finding out what they are is really important. Be careful with flexibility. It can become a kind of addiction. You find you're working, you don't know why you are after 10 or 12 hours. That's a great point, Raf. Yeah, you've got the flexibility. It's got to work for you as well as for your employer. Dress code. So thoughts about dress code. Casual seems to break down some barriers and creates a more personal feel. Yeah, okay, so that's an interesting question. So in terms of dress code, I mean, I'm not wearing any trousers. I am wearing trousers, of course. I'm just wearing a pair of jeans and a polo shirt. Normally, during the working day, I'll just have a t-shirt on or a tracksuit top or something like that. I'll just dress up. This is me dressed up. Sometimes I'll even put on a suit, who knows? But that tends to be very, very dependent on the culture of the company that you're working for. So that's a great tip. Kind of figure out if you have to wear a tie to go into the office, do you have to wear a tie when you're working at home? I'd argue you probably don't. Best way to manage start and stop times. So for me, again, I try to, there are 8 hours in a working day, and I try to be very clear with people that once that 8 hours is full, I cannot do more work. I will, if there's a really good reason, I'll work a bit longer, but at the same time, I'm not going to get into the habit of working 13-hour days because it's not good for your mental health. And it looks like my camera's just decided to play up. We're nearly finished, so I'll leave it at that. Let's just fade it in and fade it back out. No, okay. Right, sorry about that, folks, but let's crack on. So is it a bad idea to work from home where it's very comfortable, like at the couch? You can absolutely do that, but don't do it long term because it's going to be bad for your spine, and it's going to be bad. You'll just end up carrying weight in different places, and I wouldn't recommend it myself. Love working from home, but I miss human interaction. Any suggestions there? So that's where we start talking about the cameras and all of those kinds of things. I'm not sure why that's decided to turn off, but we'll crack on. You usually have a podcast or an IT training video running in the background to learn and have background noise. That's great if that works for you. Personally, if something's background noise, I want to not have to focus about it. That Twitter tag was a good question. Was #RockWFH. So just a reminder there for anyone who's still out there. If you take a photo of your working area, put it on Twitter, attach that hashtag to it. We'll give away some swag at the end of the week to the best area. Really on your job, yes, somebody did steal my lunch on a number of occasions. I think I know who it was. That's someone there. with, I'm guessing that's a Twitter hashtag. Let's save that for later. Snacking for sure is an issue. It definitely is for me. So I've moved away from having like sweets, and I keep things like dried corn and dried butter beans and things like that. And cashew nuts as well. So they're slightly more healthy. They're still very fatty though. Social interacting was great. Now everybody is alone, and that's getting a lot of people down. Zoom meetings are horrible. Yeah, I've not had any Zoom meetings where people are in pajamas, but yeah, I guess it depends on who you're on those calls with. And another request for the hashtag for the pictures. How do I make a hard stop with work? So the easy way to do that is kind of figure what time would you normally finish work, and set the expectations that you're not going to be working after that, and then close your laptop. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but realistically, the only person who can control that is yourself. We're down to 5 minutes. We're doing pretty well. I'm so amazed. Thank you so much to everybody who's taken part in this, and you know, who's chatted through this and sent in these pieces of feedback. Any recommendations on how to people to get video on for meetings? The way I do it is I join the meeting with my camera on at all times. And it gets really awkward for the people who don't put the camera on. So if they don't put the camera on, then that's absolutely fine. But if you just carry on talking, don't ask them to put the camera on. Generally, that guilt trips people into it. So that's worth a try for sure. Not able to see any questions or suggestions in chat. Yeah, so the questions, when you put it in the questions, only I can see that, unfortunately. If you put it in chat, then, but nobody's typed anything in the chat. So yeah, there we go. My wife and I cannot work in the same home office. So I guess that's similar to myself and my partner. She works downstairs in the lounge, I work in the office, and you know, that works out pretty well. I think if we both had to work in the same room, we would kill each other. How important audio is to meetings, and how to improve my audio and video. Yeah, so audio and video. So you can go out there, you can spend a lot of money on microphones, you can spend a lot of money on cameras, but as we've discovered, the posh camera here decided it's for some reason to turn off. Generally, the biggest thing for video is going to be the lighting. If you can get the lighting to work for you, this can be a lot easier if you don't have a window behind you, by the way. So if you can organize your office so that you're facing a window rather than having a window behind you, then that can be really helpful, because you don't have massive amount of light coming through behind you. But if that's not a choice, then having some lights in front of you can be super helpful. There we go. Yeah, Eric mentioned the lighting in the background. So I've got a green screen. I can use that for these kinds of things. I quite like having, you know, I think having some books and things is absolutely fine for these kind of events. More human interaction is important. New messaging styles for hosting remote meetings, especially with clients. Okay, that's interesting. Over the summer of 2020, I spent a lot more time with my family outside. I really enjoyed it and would like to carry that into the coming years. Not sure how it will play out when we return to the office. Any ideas? So that's from, we've got a lot of people called Eric on the call today. So yeah, it's basically, you just need to float the idea with your boss. Put the idea out there. Look, okay, we've done this. I've been super productive for the past year. What can we do to kind of make this work going forward? I'm going to skip through some of these remaining questions because we're down to a minute. Wired connections, better than wireless, absolutely agreed. Check your posture, make sure you have a good chair, and if you can afford it, a standing desk, absolutely. Yep, done exactly the same thing. Yeah, Gareth agreeing there about the Pomodoro, the tomato technique, break things into little chunks and be more agile. It can help with focus. Absolutely agree, Gareth. Screen time on Mac works well. Yeah, okay, so that's helpful for automatically closing applications and preventing them from working, things like that. So, I'll put this last one in as well. Shower every morning helps to kickstart a fresh start. Yeah, absolutely does. So I try to go for a run sometimes, and then I'll have a shower, and then I'll start work, and I feel super powerful. But yeah, listen, I just really wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who's joined in on this. Normally when we run these webinars, we'll get maybe 2 or 3 questions, and it means the world to me that everyone's kind of chipped in. They've all had their own ideas, and we've hopefully been able to help a few of the newer people out there. If you want to learn more about Runecast, please go to runecast.com and start your free 14-day trial. You can also reach out to us at innovate@runecast.com for a deep dive with myself or one of my colleagues. And you can also reach us on Twitter as @Runecast, or if you want to get me, I'm @Kev_Johnson. But on that note, again, thank you so much to everybody who's joined. We're bang on the top of the hour, and hopefully this has been useful to you, and I hope to see you again on another webinar in the near future. Thanks very much.